The sun was slipping behind the terminal windows as passengers hurried down the jet bridge toward Flight 482. Luggage wheels clacked on the metal floor, voices mixed in a low hum, and tired travelers glanced at their watches. The flight crew stood ready, uniforms crisp and badges shining. Among the crowd, a tall black woman in a smart navy suit moved with calm confidence. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and she carried only a small leather briefcase. No one looked twice at her as she passed the gate desk. She showed her boarding. Pass stepped through the doorway, found her assigned seat by the window in first class. The cabin had soft lighting, pale gray seats, and neatly folded blankets. A few seats were empty, but most held passengers, adjusting pillows or stowing carry-on bags. The woman sat down and placed her briefcase under the seat in front of her. She smiled politely when a crew member approached, her eyes steady and kind. Her breathing was slow, as if she was used to waiting calmly in busy airports. The flight attendant, a young woman new to the job, moved quickly through the aisle. Her name tag read Emma, and her eyes showed strain. She had been on duty since early morning, helping passengers check bags, guide lost travelers, and calm a small child who cried for her mother. Now she faced a plane full of people who all seemed to need something from her. Emma tried hard to keep a friendly face, but under her practiced smile lay a growing weariness. Emma paused at one seat deeper in first class. A tall man fumbled with his bag and kicked lightly at her leg. He cleared his throat and demanded, "Miss, I asked you to move that bag back. It is blocking my seat." Emma's lips tightened. She bit back a quick apology and moved the bag. She forced her voice to stay calm when she said, "Sorry, sir. I'm moving it right away." Behind her, a couple spoke quietly, planning their vacation. Emma reached for her clipboard, checked a note on the boarding manifest, then noticed that the woman at the window had not offered her boarding pass. The woman sat with her hands folded calmly in her lap, eyes watching the aisle. Emma cleared her throat and held out her hand. "Excuse me, ma'am. May I see your boarding pass, please?" The woman lifted her briefcase, opened it gently, and pulled out a glossy card. She handed it to Emma with a small nod. "Here you are," she said in a steady, soft voice. Emma glanced at the pass. She frowned for a moment. Something did not match. The row number was correct, but the seat class printed on the pass read First Class VIP Access. Emma had never encountered that phrase before. Her eyes flicked from the pass to the woman's calm face. She stared at the name. Emma had learned millions of names and faces in training, but she did not recognize this one. Emma's throat felt dry. She handed the pass back with a slight shake of her head. "I am sorry, but this does not match our booking. You need to move to seat 1C in economy." Her voice grew firmer. She pointed down the aisle. "Please gather your things and move there now." The woman's lips curved into a quiet smile. She set down her briefcase and shook her head slowly. "My boarding pass is correct," she said gently. "I have this seat." Emma's heart pounded. It had been taught to treat every passenger alike, but she felt pressure from the high maintenance. Travelers who expected special treatment? She remembered the voice on the radio. One more minute, and they would close the doors. Emma swallowed hard. She glanced at her watch, then back at the woman. Her training insisted on a polite tone, but her exhaustion twisted her patience into thin threads. A light tension filled the aisle, and other passengers turned to watch. Emma took a step forward. She raised her voice, each word clipping the air. "I am the flight attendant. You must obey my instructions. Move now before I ask the captain to remove you from this flight." A hush fell. The woman met Emma's gaze. In her eyes was calm authority. She straightened her spine and said, "I paid for this seat, and I will not move." Her voice held no anger, only clear determination. Emma felt a flicker of doubt. She looked at the woman's composed face. Something about her stance felt different from the rest of the travelers. A male passenger in the row behind shifted in. His seat, he cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Hey, you need to move," he said to the woman. Emma shook her head, stepping in again. She raised her palm in a warning gesture. "I will not ask a second time." The cabin felt smaller. and hotter. Emma's shoulders tensed. She took a deep breath, but the weight of the long day pressed down on her chest. Slowly, as if acting out of habit, she lifted her hand and struck the woman's cheek. A sharp crack echoed in the hush. The woman's head turned gently, her cheek reddening. For a moment, she sat perfectly still. Her eyes widened, not with anger but with calm surprise. Emma gasped, her own hand trembling. The woman tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and touched her cheek softly. As if testing reality, gasps and murmurs stirred through first class. All around, people blinked in disbelief. A man with gray hair reached over and pressed a button on his armrest, calling Emma and her fellow crew members. Emma stepped back, her face pale. She did not move further, but her heart raced as though it would burst from her chest. Quiet voices rose in concern. A woman nearby touched the slapped woman's arm. "Are you all right?" she asked. The woman looked at her hand and shook her head. "Yes," she replied softly. "I am fine." Her tone held no bitterness, only gentle calm. 2 other crew members arrived. They stood at Emma's side, eyes flicking between Emma and the slapped woman. One of them said, "Ma'am, we need to handle this?" They spoke quietly to Emma, but the tension still hung in the cabin. Emma's shoulders sagged. She pressed her lips together and nodded at her colleagues. The captain's voice crackled through the cabin speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are resolving an issue up front. We apologize for the delay. Thank you for your patience." The voice sounded firm, kind, practiced. It did not mention the slap. The woman at the window seat sat straight, her hand on her briefcase, eyes looking straight ahead through the small window beside her. She breathed slowly and did not look at Emma. The passengers around her returned to their own concerns, but whispers still drifted through the cabin like soft echoes. Emma stood beside the galley, head bowed, hands clasped in front of her. She did not move to take her place by the aisle. No one knew then that the calm woman in the navy suit was the airline's CEO. No one, not even Emma, realized that this quiet passenger had flown across the world to observe day-to-day operations. In that moment, the cabin fell silent, waiting for what would come next. And the woman who sat at the window, having paid for her seat and earned every right to it, stayed steady, her face soft, her posture unbroken, knowing that this single moment might change everything. The cabin fell into a stunned silence the instant the flight attendant's hand made contact. Time seemed to slow as eyes widened, and a soft gasp rippled through first class. The woman by the window touched her cheek and blinked, as if waking from a dream, then looked around. She sat up straight, quiet and calm, though the redness on her skin spoke of the blow she had just taken. Passengers who had been busy with books or tablets now stared, frozen by what had happened just yards from them. A fellow traveler reached out and pressed the call button. Within seconds, 2 more flight attendants hurried down the aisle there, faces marked by surprise and concern. They moved to the woman's side, hands raised in apology as they murmured, "I'm so sorry." "Are you all right? Please let me help you." The slapped woman met their eyes, steady and unflinching, and shook her head gently. "I will be fine," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you." She set her briefcase on her lap and folded her hands, offering a small, grateful smile to the concerned crew. Behind her, Emma stood a short step away, her own arm still hanging in midair. Her face was pale, and her breath came in shallow, quick gasps. She stared at the woman's calm expression and felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Worst part was not the slap itself, but what it said about Emma's own stress and fear. She had lost control in front of dozens of travelers, and she knew it. One of the senior attendants placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "Emma," she said quietly, guiding her away from the woman's seat. "We will handle this. Please step back." Emma nodded, her legs weak. She allowed herself to be led toward the galley, leaving behind the click of cameras as some passengers quietly raised their phones. A senior attendant moved to stand by the suspended woman, offering tissues and water. A murmur of voices filled the cabin as other passengers leaned forward. Some whispered in low tones, asking for news. A man near the center aisle said, "Is she okay? Did you see that?" A woman next to him shook her head. "I can't believe it, right in first class." Child clutching a stuffed toy looked up at his mother. "Mom, why did she hit her?" he asked in a small voice. The mother sighed, pulling the child close. "I'm not sure," she whispered. "But we'll find out." Up in the cockpit, the captain and first officer exchanged a quick glance. Through the small window, the captain saw Emma being supported by her co-worker and the slapped woman still seated calmly. He pressed a button on his headset. "This is Captain Reynolds," he said softly. "Flight attendant Emma has struck a passenger. We need a report down here." The first officer reached for a clipboard and began jotting notes. "Understood, Captain," she replied. "I'll call ground security and notify operations." On the cabin intercom, the captain's calm voice addressed everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for the delay. We have a minor situation up front that we are resolving. Thank you for your patience." The tone was polite, professional, but it did little to calm the buzz in first class. Passengers exchanged glances and whispered theories about what had happened and why. The airline's and flight manager, someone the crew called the floor manager, moved quickly down the aisle. She carried a tablet and wore a crisp blue blazer embossed with the airline's logo. When she reached the first class section, she bent to speak with the senior attendant beside the slapped woman. Their heads were close together as they discussed what to do next. Eventually, the manager raised her head, cleared her throat, and turned to address the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to an unexpected incident, we ask you to remain in your seats. If you have any questions or concerns, please speak with one of our crew members. Thank you for your understanding." A hush returned, though now the tension had deepened. The slapped woman reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small hand mirror. She tilted it, studying her cheek, then closed her eyes for a moment. Breathing in and out slowly, nearby, another passenger whispered, "She seems so composed." A third said, "I wonder who she is." But no one yet knew her name or her status, only that she had been treated unfairly. Emma sat on a stool in the galley, head in her hands. Her heart ached with regret. She had trained for weeks, practiced polite greetings and calm responses. But under the strain of a long day, she had snapped. Now everything she had learned seemed to vanish. A colleague knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her back. "It's going to be all right," he said softly. "Just tell the truth when asked. We all make mistakes." Back in first class, the senior attendant knelt to offer the slapped woman an extra pillow and a bottle of water. The woman accepted without fuss. "Thank you," she whispered. She sipped slowly, her gaze steady, and then asked the attendant, "Can I have a new blanket?" "This one is a bit creased," the attendant nodded, handing her a fresh blanket folded neatly. The small normalcy of requesting a blanket seemed to settle everyone. Passengers shifted in their seats, some folding hands, some leaning back to rest. The cabin lights dimmed slightly, and the hum of the air vents became louder than the low whispers. On the tablet screen in the galley, the floor manager was typing an incident report. Ground security had been alerted, and the captain had radioed. "Ahead for police assistance on arrival." Note popped up. "Identify passenger. Confirm role." The manager frowned, scrolling through passenger details. When she saw the slapped woman's name and title, her eyes widened. She tapped the screen again, sending an urgent message. "This passenger is our CEO. Repeat, CEO on board." In first class, the slapped woman closed her eyes again, aware of every heartbeat, every breath of everyone around her. She had flown incognito to see how her people were treated. Her mission had been to sit quietly, note the service, and then return home with fresh ideas. Instead, she had been struck by her own crew. She opened her eyes and glanced at the senior attendant. The woman's face showed respect and worry, but the CEO simply nodded, as if to say, "I understand." A soft click echoed as the attendant's tablet received the new message. The senior attendant's face went pale. She touched the CEO's hand gently. "Ma'am, may I speak with you privately?" The CEO nodded and slid from her seat. The two walked a few steps down the aisle, out of view of most passengers. voices lowered to hushed tones. The rest of first class waited. Some passengers closed. Their eyes some stared out the windows at the clouds drifting by. The engines hummed steadily, ready to push the plane into the sky. The soft rustle of blankets was the only sound as the cabin filled with the strange mix of relief and dread. That comes when something terrible and remarkable happens at the same time. In the galley, Emma heard footsteps and looked up. She saw the senior attendant return alone, her expression unreadable. Emma rose from the stool, breath catching in her throat. Everyone in the galley felt the shift in air. The situation was about to change in ways no one expected. And in first class, the CEO returned to her seat with steady eyes, prepared to turn a painful moment into an opportunity for change. The news broke in the airline's headquarters before the plane even landed. A junior operations officer had been reviewing the incident report and saw an unfamiliar title next to the passenger's name, Chief Executive Officer. He blinked at the screen, then scrolled back up to confirm. The slapped woman in first class. The calm passenger who accepted a fresh blanket and sipped water without complaint was the leader of the entire company. He tapped on her employee record and saw her face in the company directory. He tapped again to send an urgent alert. CEO involved in onboard incident. Immediate attention required. Within minutes, the operations center buzzed with activity. Phones rang as department heads learned that their boss had been struck by a flight attendant. The head of human resources pushed back from her desk, eyes wide. The head of safety and compliance stood up, pacing the small office. "This changes everything," she muttered. "We have to handle it carefully." Senior Vice President leaned forward, speaking into his headset. "Prepare a statement for the press, and someone find out exactly what happened on that plane." Meanwhile, on flight 4082, the knocked woman sat again, posture straight, eyes forward. She felt the slight ache on her cheek, but focused on the steady hum of the engines. She had flown incognito to understand the life of her frontline crew. In her office, she often heard reports of small problems. But she knew there was a gulf between meter readings on a tablet and the real emotions of passengers and staff. As her own crew circled her with concern, she saw the fear and surprise in their faces. The senior attendant crouched beside her again. "Ma'am, we've been told you are our CEO," she said softly. The CEO nodded, touching her cheek gently. "Yes," she said, voice low and clear. "That is my role." The attendant's eyes widened. She placed a reassuring hand on the CEO's arm. "You did not deserve that. I am so sorry." The CEO smiled faintly. "I understand mistakes happen under stress," she said. "Let us use this moment to learn." A young crew member pressed his lips together and asked, "Ma'am, would you like to meet with the captain when we land?" "Arrange it." The CEO nodded again. "Yes, I want to speak with Captain Reynolds and Emma. We must meet in private." The attendant gave a quick nod, then looked around at the other crew members, eyes bright with relief that the CEO would engage, not punish in anger. Up in the cockpit, the captain and first officer taxied the plane toward the gate. Window, the captain saw vehicles lining up beside the terminal and a few uniformed police officers waiting on the tarmac. He switched off the engines and clicked on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Atlanta. We will be at the gate in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience." The cabin echoed with polite claps and soft sighs, some relieved. Passengers began to stand, gathering their belongings. The CEO remained seated until the cabin door opened. When the flight attendants directed her out, she rose smoothly and followed the senior attendant through the aisle. Passengers pressed phones to their faces, capturing the moment. A small woman in a crisp suit and low heels strode past them. No one spoke. They watched as she disappeared down the jet bridge into the bright lights of the airport terminal. In the terminal, a small group waited. The airline's in-flight operations manager, the head of human resources, security personnel, and the police officers. The CEO stepped into the group, greeted them with a nod, and straightened her jacket. She glanced at Emma, who stood beside two uniformed officers, her eyes cast downward. Emma's face was pale, and she wrapped her arms around herself, looked small in the bright terminal space. The CEO walked over with calm steps. Emma's heart pounded. She did not know what to expect. The CEO stopped 2 paces away and raised her hand slightly. Emma lifted her own hand instinctively, a soft gesture of greeting. The CEO's voice was gentle but firm. "Emma, thank you for coming." Emma swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Yes, ma'am." The CEO nodded. "Please stand with me over here." She led Emma to a quiet corner near the gate's exit. The head of human resources joined them, arms folded. A uniformed officer stood nearby. The CEO looked at Emma's face. "Emma, I know you have had a long day and many pressures," she began. Emma blinked, tears gathering in her eyes. "I am so sorry," she whispered. The CEO shook her head slowly. "I do not want an apology right now. I want to understand why this happened." Emma looked down. She cleared her throat and said, I was stressed. Passengers were upset. The day was long, and I lost my calm." She lifted her eyes. "But I know it was wrong." The CEO's face softened. "I appreciate your honesty," she said. "We all face stress in our jobs, but our role demands respect for everyone on board. This includes me, and it includes every passenger you serve." Emma's shoulders slumped, tears slipping free. "Yes, ma'am, I understand." The CEO nodded and placed a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. "I will make sure you get the help you need to manage stress. We will improve training and support for all our crew. But first, I need to address the passengers who witnessed this." She turned and raised her hand, gaining attention from the nearby group. "Thank you," she said. "I will speak to them now." In the waiting area, news cameras from local outlets had gathered after receiving tips. Reporters crowded around the cabin door, and a microphone was thrust toward the CEO as she stepped forward. Emma still by her side. The CEO lifted her chin, cleared her throat, and began to speak. "Good evening. I am the CEO of this airline. Earlier today, one of our flight attendants slapped me during boarding. I want to say that while I understand the stresses of their work, this behavior is not acceptable. It contradicts our values of respect and care." She paused, letting her words sink in. Flashbulbs popped and microphones hovered closer. She continued, voice steady. "We will conduct a full review of this incident. The flight attendant involved, Emma, has acknowledged her mistake and will receive support and training. We apologize to all passengers for the distress this caused. We commit to making our airline a place where every person, passenger, or crew feels safe and respected." She closed her statement, looked directly into the camera, and said thank you. Then she nodded to Emma and turned away. Reporters pressed questions, but the CEO walked calmly past them, leading Emma with her. They headed toward a small lounge area reserved for VIPs. Inside, the head of human resources ushered Emma to a chair and offered water. The CEO sat across from her, placing her briefcase on a side table. "Emma, you said you lost control," she began. "I want to know how we can prevent this from happening again." Emma wiped her eyes and thought for a moment. "I think we need someone to help with stress," she said. "Maybe a counselor on call or regular check-ins when flights get busy." The CEO nodded. "That is a good idea. We'll arrange that." Emma glanced up and added, "Also, more time between flights. We often have back-to-back trips with little rest." The CEO made notes on a small pad. "Agreed. I will speak to scheduling to give you more recovery time." They talked for several minutes, their voices low and sincere. Outside, security officers chatted quietly, unlocking doors and preparing reports. After the discussion, the CEO stood and extended her hand. Emma took it, relief flooding her face. "Thank you for being honest," the CEO said. "I know this was hard." Emma nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for listening," she replied softly. Later that night, back at headquarters, the management team gathered in a large conference room. The CEO took her place at the head of the table, photos from the terminal incident displayed on a screen behind her. She spoke calmly but with authority. "Today showed me realities I did not fully appreciate. Our crew needs better support. Our passengers need assurance of respect. We'll roll out new stress management resources, adjust scheduling, and reinforce our culture of care." She paused, looked around at the faces of her leaders, and said, let us turn a painful event into lasting change. Outside, as passengers left the gate, many whispered about the CEO who had been slapped and then led a public apology. Some commuters said they felt proud to fly with an airline that admitted mistakes. Others talked about Emma, wondering how it felt to apologize to their boss in public. And somewhere above the clouds, a plane waited for its next flight, its crew carrying with them a renewed understanding of dignity and respect. ChatGPT said, the next morning, the airline's headquarters buzzed with urgent energy. In a bright conference room, leaders gathered around a long table. The CEO stood at the head, her navy suit crisp and her expression calm but determined. Her sat the heads of operations, human resources, safety, and communications. A large screen behind them displayed a single image, the moment the flight attendant's hand met the CEO's cheek. It was a stark reminder of what had happened and why change was needed. The CEO began to speak. Her voice held both firmness and empathy.
Yesterday,
We saw a mistake that cost us trust, she said. Today we must fix what led to it. Motion to the head of safety, who nodded and clicked a button. Slide appeared listing key points, a review of training programs, improved stress support for crew, and a new policy on conflict resolution. The room was silent, each leader focused on their role in the solution. First, they discussed training. The head of human resources explained that current courses focused on safety procedures and customer service basics. They lacked real situations that captured the emotional toll of a long, demanding shift. The CEO listened as a proposal was outlined. Create interactive workshops where crew could role-play tense scenarios and practice calm responses. They would invite veteran attendants to share stories of their toughest days. By walking through realistic conflicts in a safe space, the team believed attendants could learn to stay patient under pressure. Next came stress support. The head of operations described the brutal schedules many flight attendants faced. Back-to-back flights, early mornings, late nights, time zone changes, and constant demands from passengers all added up. The CEO tapped her pen thoughtfully and asked, "How do we help them in the moment?" A junior HR manager spoke up. "We could set up an on-call counseling line available 24/7. Crew members could call when they feel overwhelmed, even during a layover." The CEO smiled. "Yes. And what about debrief sessions after difficult flights? Quick 10-minute check-in before boarding the next flight." Heads nodded in agreement. By the end of the meeting, they had committed to hiring extra counselors and scheduling brief team check-ins after every trip. Then they addressed communication with passengers. The chief of communications suggested revamped apology protocols. If a passenger or a crew member is harmed, the airline would dispatch a manager immediately to offer a sincere apology refreshment. And any necessary help? They would track these incidents in a public dashboard, showing transparency and accountability. The CEO approved. "We owe open honesty to everyone who flies with us," she said. "People respect truth more than perfect." Spin. Finally, they turned to discipline policies. The legal advisor cautioned that any punishment must be fair and consistent. They proposed a tiered system after a serious incident. A crew member would face retraining, a short suspension, and a written acknowledgement of the mistake. Repeat offenses would carry heavier consequences. The flight attendant, Emma's case, would set the tone. She would lead the first workshop in which she shared her own experience, showing others how even the best can slip. The room agreed that shame should not be a tool. Learning and support must be. With plans approved, the CEO closed the meeting. She looked around the table and said, "Let us move quickly. I want these changes live in the next 2 months. We must heal and grow." One by one, the leaders stood, gathering their notes, ready to take action. The atmosphere felt hopefully powerful shift from yesterday's tension. Meanwhile, at the airport, the cabin crew finished preparing for the midday flight. Emma arrived early, her uniform crisp, her face thoughtful. She paused in the crew lounge and opened a small notebook. On the first page, she had written lessons learned. She reviewed bullet points. Stay calm, breathe, ask for help early. She read them quietly, touching each word as if saying, "A promise." A colleague entered, and offered her a glass of water. "Ready for today?" he asked softly. Emma nodded. "Yes, I want to do better." At 11:45, the gate agents called for boarding. Passengers lined up, and Emma stepped onto the jet bridge. She paused at the door and looked back at the terminal through the glass. Memories of yesterday's moment flashed in her mind, her raised hand, the sudden hush, the CEO's calm face. She felt resolve instead of fear. She lowered her gaze, took a deep breath, and walked into the cabin with a genuine smile. The flight proceeded smoothly. Emma welcomed each passenger by name, helped families with children, and adjusted pillows for comfort. No tension rose. Her kindness was steady and sincere. During a lull, when most were seated, she went back to first class and knelt beside Anne, an elderly man who struggled to close his bag. She helped him with a gentle laugh and a reassuring word. He nodded gratefully. She moved on, offering that same warmth to each seat. After the mid-flight meal, Emma checked on the CEO's usual seat now, occupied by a different business traveler. She smiled, wishing she could apologize again, but the new passenger only asked for extra cream with his coffee. Emma delivered it quickly and gave him a light nod. The small gesture felt like closure. Back in headquarters, the communications team posted an update on the airline's website. It explained the incident, outlined the new support programs, and invited feedback. Social media channels lit up with surprised but positive comments. "Impressed by the honest response," wrote one follower. "Finally an airline that cares," wrote another. The CEO retweeted some, adding her own note. "Commitment to respect. And empathy guides us forward. Thank you for holding us accountable." That afternoon, Emma arrived at a training room set up with tables, chairs, and a circle of cushions in the center. A small group of attendants gathered, curious but respectful. Emma stood in front, her uniform crisp, her badge shining. She cleared, her throat feeling butterflies but determined. "Hello, everyone," she began, voice firm but gentle. "I'm here to share what happened to me and what I learned." She spoke about the pressures of the job, her mistake, and the pain she caused. She described the CEO's response, the private apology, the public statement, and the vow to support her and the whole crew. She ended by saying, "We all slip sometimes. What matters is how we grow." Hands raised, attendants asked questions. "How did you forgive yourself?" one asked. Emma replied by accepting help and remembering why I chose this job to help people. "I want that joy back," another asked. "What should I do when I feel overwhelmed?" Emma shared her breathing exercise and urged them to call the counselor if needed. The discussion lasted for an hour, each person sharing a small insight. When the session ended, the trainer thanked Emma. "That was brave," she said. Emma smiled, feeling lighter. Weeks passed. The new training rolled out to every base. Crew members learned de-escalation techniques, attended debriefs, and received regular check-ins from counselors. Scheduling adjustments allowed more rest between flights. Passenger feedback surveys noted warmer interactions and fewer complaints. The airline's public image improved and internal morale rose. One evening, the CEO visited a busy airport hub, disguised in a plain jacket and jeans. She mingled with staff, placing coffee orders, chatting about schedules, and listening to their hopes and frustrations. She saw Emma at a gate, busy with a family of 4. The CEO smiled, proud of how far they had come. No headlines recorded the moment. It was a quiet sign that the changes were real. Back at headquarters, the CEO reviewed reports showing a drop in onboard incidents and higher employee satisfaction scores. She leaned back in her chair, feeling a steady warmth in her chest. What had begun in shock and pain had become a story of healing and unity. She whispered to herself, "This is what respect looks like." Outside, the sun set over the runway, planes climbing into the sky, carrying hope and renewed trust to passengers around the world. Months passed since the incident that changed everything. The airline moved forward on its promise to treat every person with respect and care. Emma found herself in a new routine that felt kinder and more supportive. Each morning, before the first flight, she met with a small group of colleagues and a counselor who guided them through simple exercises to manage stress. They talked about their lives, their families, and the moments that made them proud to wear their uniforms. Ma listened as others shared hard days and small victories. In those moments, she felt less alone. The CEO kept her word to remain connected to her crew. She often made surprise visits to airports, blending in among travelers until she recognized familiar faces. One day she spotted Emma helping an elderly passenger with her walker. The CEO watched quietly from a distance, recalling the day of the slap. Instead of anger, she felt pride at how Emma had grown. After the flight landed, the CEO introduced herself and thanked Emma for her kindness. Emma's face lit up with genuine joy. They spoke briefly about the changes they had built together. And Emma felt truly seen. Across the airline, the new workshops became a cornerstone of training. Flight attendants practiced calm voices and measured responses in simulated turbulence, long lines, and mental fatigue. They learned breathing techniques and simple words to de-escalate tense situations. Passengers who once experienced rushed service now received a genuine smile and a few extra seconds of attention. Crew members reported fewer arguments and more understanding. When a child cried or a lost bag delayed boarding, attendants offered water, soft words, reminders that they were all human. On long-haul flights, crew pairs began taking short breaks together in quiet lounges. These breaks were more than just a moment to rest. They were a chance to share stories, laugh about odd moments, and support each other. A flight attendant who once felt overwhelmed by back-to-back trips now looked forward to these pauses. She even wrote a note about how a 10-minute coffee break with a colleague made her day better. When scheduling teams, managers paired experienced attendants with newer ones so they could mentor each other. The airline's website showed a public CO doc dashboard tracking incidents and resolutions. Each time a passenger reported a problem, the company followed up within 24 hours. They offered apologies, free seat upgrades on the next flight, or vouchers for lounge access. Customers praised the transparency. Many wrote comments like, "I feel heard," or "They really care." Some shared stories of small acts that lifted heavy moods. A crew member fetching a lost toy or bringing an extra blanket on a cold night. The CEO read these messages regularly and shared them with her team at headquarters. The human resources team saw a clear shift in morale. Employee surveys showed that feelings of stress had dropped by more than half. Crew members felt they had a voice, and that leadership listened. Emma, once a junior attendant with shaky confidence, became a mentor in workshops. She told her own story of a mistake that taught her strength and empathy. New hires looked up to her as an example of growth. When she spoke, people leaned forward. They knew she had felt the full weight of failure and had turned it into fuel for positive change. One of the busiest times of the year arrived, the holiday travel season. Airports swelled with families, holiday shoppers, and travelers hurrying to reunite with loved ones. Past seasons had felt like storms of stress for flight attendants, but this year, things felt different. Emma and her teammates greeted each passenger with warm smiles and clear directions. When delays came, they moved through the aisles, offering snacks and updates. Parents relaxed, knowing the crew cared, even in the busiest moments. The calm tone in the cabin reminded everyone that they were being looked after. A few special moments stood out. On Christmas Eve, a small group of crew organized a quiet caroling session in a quiet airport lounge. Singing soft songs to travelers who waited for late flights, children in puffy coats watched wide-eyed as attendants filled the hall with gentle music. Some passengers joined in, creating a sense of community that warmed the chilly terminal. The CEO, passing through on a layover, paused to listen. She felt tears in her eyes at the sight of her crew spreading kindness without any fanfare. Not every day was perfect. There were still moments of tension, late nights, demanding passengers, and the fear of making mistakes. But now attendants had tools to lean on. Emma once found herself face-to-face with an angry traveler who shouted about a lost seat assignment. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, breathed in and out 3 times, then spoke gently. "I'm sorry for the confusion. Let me find a solution right now." The traveler's anger softened as Emma worked to fix the issue. By the time he boarded, He offered a tired smile and a quiet thank you. The CEO often reflected on the journey. In her private office, she kept a small framed photo of the moment Emma raised her hand to apologize. Next to it was a photo from the caroling session with crew members holding candles. These images reminded her that growth often begins with pain and leads to joy. She made it a habit to share these moments at board meetings, saying, "This is the true face of leadership when we admit mistakes and choose to learn." The airline's profits and customer ratings steadily improved. Passengers appreciated the warm service, and travel bloggers wrote about the friendly skies they had experienced. News outlets featured stories of Emma's workshops and the CEO's community visits, it's not as a PR stunt, but as genuine examples of change. Internally, managers reported fewer sick calls and lower turnover. Attendants stayed longer, feeling valued and heard. At the end of the year, the company held a celebration at a small banquet hall. Crew members, managers, and support staff gathered for dinner. The CEO stood at a microphone and thanked everyone for their hard work and courage. She told the story of how a harsh moment in first class led to stronger bonds and better care for all. Emma joined her on stage. The audience gave them a standing ovation. Emma's cheeks flushed. The CEO wrapped an arm around her shoulders in a friend's hug rather than a boss's grip. After the ceremony, Emma stepped outside onto a balcony. The night air felt cool and fresh. She looked at the runway lights, glowing in the distance, and thought about how far she had come. She had learned that every person behind a uniform shared the same heartbeats and dreams as those they served. She placed her hand over her heart and quietly thanked the people she met on planes, the travelers she helped, and the leader who chose. Understanding over punishment, in the months that followed, the airline continued to shine. Other companies studied their model, adopting similar programs to support staff and build trust. Emma received invitations to speak at travel conferences and training seminars. She spoke about empathy, teamwork, and the power of second chances. She reminded listeners that a single moment of kindness or regret could spark a movement toward better care for everyone. And so, what began with a tense confrontation grew into a story of healing and hope. A slap meant to push someone down became the opening for building everyone up. The CEO, Emma, and all who flew or worked with the airline discovered that respect and compassion could transform stress into strength. The skies above and the terminals below felt softer, kinder, and more human. And each time a plane lifted off, it carried with it the promise that even the hardest moments can lead to brighter journeys.